Hello and welcome. Tonight, federal government moves to end farmer herder crisis across the country as the president receives a report of the National Conference on Livestock with recommendation for the establishment of the Ministry of Livestock. Nigeria and South Africa sign a memorandum of understanding to enhance aviation safety in the country. An appeal court reversed its tribunal judgment, which declared Ndudi Elumelu of the PDP as winner. House of Representatives seat declares Ngozi Okoli of the Labour Party as winner of the election.
On business news tonight, President Bola Tinubu appoints Zach Adedeji as acting chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, asked current chairman Mohammed Nami to proceed on terminal leave.
On sports news tonight, Super Eagles forward Victor Osimhen makes a 12-man shortlist for the 2023 Best FIFA Football Awards for the Men's Player of the Year, barely a week after being nominated for the 2023 Ballon d'Or.
From Abuja, the nation's capital, 4 people reportedly killed and over 10 others abducted in Goronyo local government area in the Eastern Senatorial District of Sokoto State.
And in international news from London, the UN's World Meteorological Organization says most of the thousands of deaths in the Libya floods could have been avoided.
And we begin with efforts by the federal government to end the protracted farmer herder crisis in the country, which are being stepped up as the president says his administration will acquire land for ranches and livestock production in the country. President Bola Tinubu stated this at the presidential villa during a meeting with members of the National Conference on Livestock Reforms, as well as heads of security agencies in the country. During the meeting, President Tinubu received the report of the National Conference on Livestock Reforms, which calls for the establishment of the Ministry of Livestock. Our State House correspondent, Emperor Simon, reports.
After a successful outing in India and the United Arab Emirates, President Bola Tinubu is back to face home-front matters. On his itinerary for the day is this meeting with heads of security agencies, members of the Committee on the National Conference on Livestock Reforms, Métis Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria, MAGBAN, among other stakeholders. The president is concerned about the inefficiency in the livestock sector and the challenge posed by farmer herder crisis in the country.
Ranching is the answer. We can create a huge economy out of the situation that we say we want for. Instead of utilizing what we have for the benefit of mankind, the populace that we have, we let it loose on organized mind. It is not the fault of others man or farmer. It's our fault, the leadership. Not finding solution, immediate, path to solve a problem. Leadership is about thinking and doing.
He is, however, quick to mention the solution his administration is bringing on board.
I will be talking to all the governors. The federal government is ready to apply to acquire land for ranches and livestock development.
The report of the National Conference on Livestock Reforms and Mitigation of Associated Conflict in Nigeria is presented during the meeting. It contains 21 recommendations to the federal government, among which is the need for a holistic approach to boosting livestock production in the country. At the end of the meeting with the president, the committee members led by the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Mr. Abdullahi Ganduje, briefed State House correspondents.
we recommended for the establishment of Ministry of Livestock and subsequent agencies, so that various aspects of the recommendations will have appropriate institutions for implementation.
As long as the triggers of the conflicts are not addressed, we are likely going to continue to have a recurring decimal. And what are the triggers? Primarily, the typical livestock herdsman is always in search of food and water for his animals.
The committee is optimistic that its recommendations will assist the government in tackling the issue of farmer herder crisis once and for all. From the presidential villa, Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the president has promised to reconstruct the LMA axis of the East-West Road following a request by some stakeholders from River State who paid him a visit today. The stakeholders were led by Governor Siminalayi Fubara, and others in attendance include the FCT Minister and former River State Governor Nyesom Wike, some officials of the Niger Delta Development Commission and traditional rulers. At the end of the meeting, which held behind closed doors, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Anueze Okocha, said that the visit was also to thank the president for appointing Rivers indigents into his government.
Approving that very, very valuable investment, $14 billion by Indorama Petrochemicals Company in Rivers State. The promise to revamp the Port Harcourt refinery, and indeed for the appointments of eminent river sons that have been made into the federal government, led by Nyesom Wike, our former governor who is now the minister of the FCT, Ajurin Gelale, the president's spokesman, and members of the Niger Delta Development Commission Board and the Southeast Development Commission Board. So we are grateful to the president and also have come to assure him of our total loyalty and support. This was just, as I say, solidarity and thank you visits. The only issue we raised in our speech was the state of the East-West Road leading to the refinery. And we did mention that that would enhance the movement of petroleum products when the refinery at Port Harcourt comes on stream. As you say, it was protest. Protest is a right. As a lawyer, I recognize that. The minority will have their protests, and the majority will have its way. The minority will have its way. It's normal. We're in a democratic society. But let the federal capital and Nigeria see the president has the prerogative to make an appointment, and he has exercised that prerogative. And all I say, let Nigerians see whether the president's appointment was justified. And I can assure you, with the performance which we expect from Minister Nyesom Wike of the Federal Capital, Nigerians will be happy that the president made that choice.
Away from the presidency, the federal government has signed a memorandum of understanding with South Africa to enhance aviation safety in Nigeria. The Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Mr. Festus Keyamo, signed the agreement with his South African counterpart, Mr. Lisa Manchu, during the second day of the Aviation African Summit in Abuja. Our correspondent Kumbi Aboluwade reports.
In the last 2 days, this hall in Abuja has been a beehive of activities. Key players in the aviation sector across the African continent converged here to mark the 7th edition of the Aviation Africa Summit. The 2023 summit focused on the issues in Africa's aviation sector and ways to tackle them. Some of the issues raised by key industry players here include exorbitant taxation, poor infrastructure, and aviation safety. Nigeria's aviation minister had some performance indicators he thought should be noted by everyone for the good of the sector.
Upgrade of Nigeria by ICAO, the continuous movement upwards by ICAO, of Nigeria by ICAO will be one of my KPIs. One of my KPIs, again, the second KPI will be how much local operators like this, how much they grow and survive. That's one of my second KPIs. And of course, the last and most important for us will be how I ramp up revenues for the federal government.
In a bid to upscale aviation safety in Nigeria, the Minister of Aviation, Mr. Festus Keyamo, supervises the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding by the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority and its counterparts from South Africa. The agreement seeks to foster relationship between both countries as well as provide aviation safety guidelines. Another highlight of the event is the signing of an agreement between two participating airlines to establish a maintenance, repair, and overall aviation facility in Nigeria.
If I can ask you, for the benefit of the...
One of the local airlines also disclosed its plans to commence direct flights to the United Kingdom in the coming weeks, with air tickets costing less than 1 million naira. At the end of the event, like icing on the cake, Nigeria's aviation minister announces plans towards tax and levies reduction.
We are going to have a roundtable very soon. I've called for a roundtable, an industry roundtable. Most of the steps we took are preliminary steps, but we're going to call for a roundtable of everybody within the industry.
Aviation safety has been of keen interest to travelers who will be hoping for significant changes in air safety in Nigeria. Kumbi Aboluade, Channels Television News.
And to legal matters, the Court of Appeal Abuja has set aside the judgment by the National and State Houses of Assembly Election Tribunal in Asaba, delivered on July the 24th, which declared Ndudi Elumelu of the People's Democratic Party winner of the election for Aniocha Oshimili Federal Constituency of Delta State. In two judgments, the Appellate Court declared Ngozi Okoli of the Labour Party as winner of the election. It faulted the tribunal for voiding Mr. Okoli's election and proceeded to dismiss the petition filed by Mr. Elumelu before the trial tribunal, and on which the voided judgment was given. The court agreed with counsel to the Labour Party, Mahmood Magaji, that contrary to the findings of the tribunal, Mr. Okoli was duly nominated and sponsored by his party, and that he resigned his appointment as a senior special assistant to the Delta State government as required by the Constitution. With over 133 million people in Nigeria affected by multidimensional poverty, the World Food Programme, WFP, says it is committing $2.5 billion to fight hunger in the country in the next 5 years. This was made known by the country director of the World Food Programme, Mr. David Stevenson, when he led a team of UN agency to visit the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betta Edu, in her office. Dr. Edu commended the gesture, explaining that Zero Hunger is one of the projects her ministry has initiated as part of the poverty and humanitarian response efforts.
We have over 133 million Nigerians that are actually affected by multidimensional poverty. And one of the biggest challenge is actually hunger. So one of the projects which we are pushing forward as a ministry is actually the Zero Hunger Project.
Yes, right.
Yes, and it's one of the key things which I would like for your team to work with us on. So it's not just going to be about school feeding. School feeding is just going to be one, homegrown school feeding would just be one aspect of the Zero Hunger Project. So we're going to be targeting different nutritious programs. So we're targeting both pregnant women, children under 5, school feeding, feeding of persons who are affected by humanitarian crisis, other persons of concern, including refugees that have found themselves within our space.
Well, I've been very impressed in such a short time to hear about the minister's leadership putting together the strategy for the ministry We talked about zero hunger. We talked about the humanitarian hubs in every local government area in the country. We talked about the World Food Program's potential to support those hubs through buying food locally and also providing assistance in the cash transfer and food voucher network that we have primarily been focusing on in the northeast of the country, but available to assist nationwide with the Zero Hunger campaign.
In part two, after the break, federal government inaugurates 15-member inter-ministerial committee to oversee the nation's 63rd independence anniversary. That's in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live from Channels Television. A reminder of our top stories. Federal government moves to end farmer herder crisis across the country as the president receives report of the National Conference on Livestock with recommendation for the establishment of a livestock ministry. Nigeria and South Africa sign a memorandum of understanding to enhance aviation safety in the country. Appeal Court reverses tribunal judgment which declared Ndudi Elumelu of the PDP as winner. House of Representatives seat declares Ngozi Okolie of the Labour Party as winner of the election. And UN's World Meteorological Organization says most of the thousands of deaths in the Libyan floods could have been avoided. And ahead of the nation's 63rd independence anniversary, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. George Akume, has inaugurated a 15-member interministerial committee to oversee the celebration. Speaking at a brief inauguration ceremony in Abuja, Senator George Akume, who was accompanied by the Minister of State for the FCT and other officials, stated that the celebration affords an opportunity to reflect on the bravery and sacrifices of national heroes who fought for the independence of the country. The lineup of activities to mark the 63rd anniversary include a public lecture, church and Jumat services, military parade, as well as a presidential broadcast on October the 1st. And to security, the clampdown on crude oil theft continues. This time, operatives of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps in Rivers State, they've arrested 10 suspects. They're accused of involvement in pipeline vandalism, crude oil theft, and illegal dealings in petroleum products. The command also impounded 9 vehicles laden with illegally refined petroleum products concealed in cellophane bags, and also seized 28,225 litres of illegally refined AGO, popularly known as diesel. One of the suspects is said to be a second-time offender who was granted bail 2 months ago after he was arrested for illegal refining of petroleum products by the Corps. Let's head to Abuja for more stories. Gloria, take it away.
Thank you, Millicent. We switch gears to Sokoto State, where 4 people have been reported killed and 18 others abducted in Goronyo local government area in the Eastern Senatorial District of Sokoto State. The police in the state has confirmed a banditry attack in Giyawa village. Sokoto State Police Public Relations Officer, Assistant Superintendent of Police, Ahmed Rufai, told Channels Television that the assailants also carted away other valuables, including livestock. He said 7 of the abducted victims later escaped and returned to their community, where many residents have fled for safety. It was gathered from other sources from the affected community that over 30 persons were abducted, but the police maintained that only 11 persons are still with the attackers. They said the police is on the trail of the bandits. Meanwhile, the military says 105 5 terrorists have been neutralized by troops in various operations across the country in the last 1 week. The Director, Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, stated this during the bi-weekly briefing on the military operations in the country. He adds that 456 suspected terrorists were also arrested during the operations. Meanwhile, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Taoreed Lagbaja, is promising that the military will continue to fight to ensure the protection of Nigeria's territorial integrity. Our correspondent, Benny Ark, reports.
Of the Chief of Army Staff.
For 3 days, senior Army officers gathered here for the Chief of Army Staff combined 2nd and 3rd quarters conference, and several operational issues were reviewed. The review presented the tasks ahead for the Army, and the Chief of Army Staff make a commitment.
The briefs we listen to and our deliberations on pertinent issues during this conference have reinforced the task ahead of us and clearly depicted that it's not going to be easy. However, as I affirmed during the opening ceremony, I do not doubt your competencies and commitment to ensuring we join hands with our sister services and other security agencies to create the enabling environment necessary for good governance by the political leadership and economic prosperity for our people.
Came from all the way from Maiduguri.
One highlight of the conference is the approval of the payment of group life assurance for families. According to the Nigerian Army, over 6,000 of relatives of personnel of the Nigerian Army are expected to benefit from the scheme. The welfare of officers and their relatives also dominated discussions when members of the Defense and Police Officers' Wives Association met the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa. The association wants more support from the Defense Headquarters in its efforts to reach out to relatives of slain officers. Also within the Defense Headquarters complex, the Defense Media Operations held its bi-weekly briefing. The military reports success in its efforts to address the nation's insecurity.
During the operations in the last 1 week, the military neutralized 151 terrorists. Troops arrested 456 of them and arrested also 43 perpetrators of oil theft. Troops also rescued 76 kidnapped hostages and denied oil theft of the estimated sum of over 1 billion naira. The priority of our operations is the protection of citizens, the protection of villages, cities, and towns from the senseless violence of terrorists and other violent extremist groups.
He says the ongoing operations reflects the commitment of the military to end terrorism and insurgency in the country. Benny Ark, Channels Television News.
In other stories, after 1 year of foreign service in Nigeria, the public affairs officer of the U.S. Consulate, Mr. Joseph Kruzich, is leaving the country. To bid him farewell, the International Visitor Leadership Program Alumni Association of the United States Consulate held a farewell ceremony in his honor. This was held alongside the graduation ceremony of participants of the Empower to Prosper Skill Acquisition Program.
It's a farewell gathering in honor of the Public Affairs Officer of the United States Consulate in Nigeria, Joseph Kruzich. Here, at a ceremony organized by the International Visitors Leadership Program, Alumni Association of the United States Consulate, they gather to graduate also 100 participants of the Empower to Prosper Skills Acquisition Program.
In the IVLP family, leadership for us is by the quality of service that is provided and the quality of impact that is made in the lives of people. The IVLP family is such that we don't just stand back and complain and murmur and point accusing fingers, but we look around for any need, any challenge that is to be met, and we always do our best, to make positive impacts and meet those challenges, not just in Lagos, but across the southern region. And we've been doing that year in, year out with the help and the support of the United States Consulate.
In the world of exchange programs that we have in the U.S. government and also here in the U.S. Consulate in Lagos, the International Visitor Leadership Program is regarded as our gold standard, our very, very best program in terms of achieving for the United States and our foreign policy what we want to achieve, which is to create mutual understanding between our own country, the United States, and other countries, in this case, Nigeria.
This is amazing. Keep going, baby.
After display of the projects embarked upon by the participants and awarding of certificates,
Congratulations.
things get sentimental as the IVLP Alumni Association bid Mr. Kruzich goodbye. They first serenade him with his favorite songs.
Fantastic, fantastic.
An emotional Kruzich, who's worked overseas for over 30 years, says he's ready to go to his dream home in Florida.
We could have done more, but I have been working for a very long time, and there comes a point in your career when you need to go home and also spend some of the last years of their life with your parents and others, and so that's what I'm going to do, and I have a really nice setup in Florida.
To end his foreign service, Mr. Kruzich says he'll first embark on a 40-day journey across Africa, one he refers to as a Moses tour, before finally heading to Florida.
Well, still ahead on the news at 10, the president appoints Zach Adedeji as acting chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Services, asks current chairman Mohammed Nami to proceed on terminal leave. That's in business news. So join us again. Welcome back. You're still watching the news at 10, coming to you live on Channels Television. To education matters in the northern part of the country, where the proliferation of unqualified teachers in public schools has been described as a setback to education. Some educationists who spoke to Channels Television explained that the problem could be traced to the recruitment process, but is compounded by poor remuneration for teachers. This is Arikime Primary School, located in Potoscom local government area of Yobe State. It has about 18,000 registered pupils and only 26 teachers. This will definitely make the learning process difficult. Although the state government has declared a state of emergency on education, built structures, as well as recruited a number of teachers, it seems the challenge is still far from over. Many schools in the state are still battling with scarcity of teachers and many underqualified teachers, especially in the rural areas.
Actually, it's really affecting. First of all, we have to start from the beginning, the recruitment process. What are the criteria and guidelines for recruitment, which has already failed? Because before you take somebody or appoint somebody for an appointment as a teacher, you must look at the qualification. What are the qualifications? What are the specialization? But this thing is lacking.
Growing population is alarming, and the number of teachers is falling. And if you look at what is happening, in most cases we are lacking trained and qualified teachers. It can be mitigated in such a way that government have to intervene employ qualified teachers, motivate the existing teachers.
Things may be on the verge of changing. A concerned organization is looking to encourage at least 14,500 community volunteer teachers to bridge the gap across 3 local government areas of Bade, Damaturu and Potiskum to be trained on continuity learning in emergencies.
We are currently training 82 community volunteer teachers that we have recruited under this project that are across 11 schools and 11 communities. They have been trained on pedagogy of alternative learning, on MHPSS, on preventing sexual abuse and exploitation and classroom management. This is a part of our effort to ensure that the lack of manpower gap have been bridged to complement the government effort, while we ensure out-of-school children have access to education even in emergencies.
Yobe State has recently set aside funds to revitalize the education sector. The government will need to, however, pay particular attention to the recruitment of more qualified teachers and rehabilitate structures destroyed by the insurgency to meet the high demand of its population. Well, that's it from the nation's capital. It's back to you, Millicent, for the rest of the news at 10.
Thanks, Gloria. And now to some company news. The nation's quest to boost its revenues, both at the federal and subnational levels, can significantly be achieved through the use of technology, as seen in developed countries. Well, this was the submission of tax experts at the InterSwitch Nigeria Revenue Summit, which brought together tax administrators and other relevant stakeholders from across the country in Abuja today. The goal was to discuss issues around revenue collection and generation with digitalization at the core.
Tax administrators and experts, as well as representatives of the Joint Tax Board at the InterSwitch Nigeria Revenue Summit, are being provided with a unique opportunity to delve deeper into the intricate web of digital payment strategies.
You're welcome, man.
The Executive Secretary of the Joint Tax Board is excited about the prospects of revenue growth and collaborative measures aimed at fortifying the country's fiscal landscape.
You imagine what we would generate if the switching companies, InterSwitch as their leader, because all this money passed through their platform, avail us this data, and we're able to mine the data, what quantum of leap we will get in our revenue in this country.
InterSwitch, who are already partnering over 30 states with digital payment solutions, is happy that the partnerships are now paying off.
We set out to inform, to educate, to enlighten, and also to give opportunity for collaboration. And I must say that the states have been very open in all their discussions, giving each other feedback on the things that they have done, working with us as partners.
Create a forum where like minds can come together to put together a template that will be used for revenue growth across the various subnationals, because prosperity is key to us in Africa, and we believe that when revenue grows, the prosperity also happens in the various subnationals.
Today we process for over 30 states, and it keeps growing. So I will be moving from one sector of the economy to the other. So I would say that it has been impressively received, and we are still collaborating and partnering with a lot more states to do this.
However, the keynote speaker wants state revenue-generating agencies to be more creative in their revenue drive.
The state internal revenue services are very siloed in their approach. But if they can now start collaborating a bit more and sharing data, for instance, I could live in Imo State and have houses in Abia, and nobody knows how many houses I have in Abia, but all they are seeing is me in my little apartment in Imo, and that's all they see in terms of being able to determine my ability to pay taxes, right?
Tax administrators are leaving the summit armed with greater knowledge to better enhance their revenue drive.
Heads of collections.
Into the oil sector, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Oil, Heineken Lukwubiri, has been touring the Petroleum Technology Development Fund Training Center in Port Harcourt to ascertain the level of work at the training center. He described it as the best facility in the country and promised that it will soon be put to use.
This is the PTDF Center for Skills Development and Training at Omagwa, Port Harcourt.
and it has been abandoned for several years until the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, NCDMB, commissioned a research on abandoned training facilities in 3 states of the South-South region and discovered the facility as one of the 250 abandoned training centers.
For today, there are no drills planned for this facility.
NCDMB then spearheaded a partnership that has brought the facility to the point where it is today, almost ready for use.
AGPC has done the job, completed the work for quite some time now. They've been sending me several letters to say they want to hand over what they've done to us. But I said, just hang on a minute. Let us get ourselves and PTDF to align, because I don't want to walk away. I haven't done this work, because I believe that the framework we have developed, we should make sure that it comes to pass.
NCDMB, in its quest to resuscitate the training center, partnered with Ano Gas Processing Company Limited.
We've done our work. Our hope is that we can find a way collectively to ensure that this facility is put to use quickly, so that youth can get the opportunity of being trained, acquire skills, contribute, whether by becoming employees of all companies or service contractors who can render value and earn good income.
The general manager of the PTDF Training Center spoke on what stalled the completion of the training center and the present stage of completion.
The entire building has labs, auditorium, library, and other offices. And in 2019 again, we formed a committee comprising staff of PTGF and NCDMB to come up with a framework of how to utilize the facility.
The Minister of Petroleum Resources for Oil, who inspected the training facility, disclosed that he will be back in 6 weeks to confirm the progress made on the facility.
I want to commend, Mega staff for doing a good job. I've also, spoken to the other contractors like Aeroton, and I've told them to, finish whatever they are doing within the next 6 weeks. I intend to be back within the next 6 weeks, and I hope that by the time I candidates would have finished their job.
The training facility, when completed, will offer trainings that will equip Nigerian youths with relevant skills in the petroleum industry.
More company news. The government of Ireland, through Board Beer, an Irish agency tasked with the responsibility of promoting the country's food and drink and horticulture industry, has launched the Spirit of Ireland, a drinks campaign in Africa. The €1 million international education programme, which was held in Lagos on the heels of the Irish government's trade mission to Nigeria, offered a unique training experience delivered by seasoned drinks experts to tell the story of Irish spirit.
With the rebirth of Irish spirits in Africa, launching Spirit of Ireland in Nigeria is the next obvious choice to kick off the campaign in Africa. With an immersive audio-visual presentation, trade customers are taken on a tour that explains the history, the Renaissance and the future of Irish spirits, all aimed at creating an in-depth understanding of the Irish drinks industry.
Both of these styles of distillation are traditional here.
The program includes scents booklets that allow participants to smell Irish Bailey fields and barrel houses. Spirits and drinks is the focus here, but a brief about its importance to the trade relationship between Nigeria and Ireland is not out of place.
Given the success in our economy and the progress we've made, and there's so many headings in our country, it is very heartening and wonderful actually to see the contribution that the Nigerian diaspora has made to that. And that's only going to continue to grow in the future. And that's going to give us an opportunity to have more business partnerships, more cultural collaborations, more education connections, more people-to-people visits, more tourists coming from Nigeria to Ireland, and hopefully more trade missions from Ireland to Nigeria.
I certainly assure you that Team Ireland will be at your disposal to ensure that we continue to develop our friendship and to see how we can work together in a mutually beneficial way over the years to come.
As part of the event, the Irish Food Board hosts 15 Irish spirits companies, showcasing the best of Irish whiskey with a view to connecting them to local distributors.
Customers that are coming to the event tonight will be able to sample the product. They will be able to listen to the individual stories of each of the distilleries so that they will understand how it will appeal to Nigerian consumers. And the reason we've come to Nigeria, and this is the first time we've done it out on the continent of Africa, is because our spirits sales to Nigeria have grown very significantly the last 2 years. So we see huge opportunities to share what we think is the best spirit that is produced in the world with the great people of Nigeria.
So far, the Spirit of Ireland has been launched in 6 global markets, including Lagos, Nigeria. Board Beer is confident that this communications campaign will positively influence business leads and commercial success for Irish drinks companies in Nigeria.
Now time for business news. Here's Joke Rogers.
Thanks, Millicent. President Bola Tinubu has approved the appointment of Zach Adedeji as the acting executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the first-class graduate in accounting from the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, who recently served as the special advisor to the president on revenue, will be in acting capacity for 3 months before his confirmation for a term of 4 years by the National Assembly. He also previously served as a Commissioner for Finance in Oyo State and Executive Secretary, CEO of the National Sugar Development Council. Meanwhile, Mohammed Nami, who was previously in charge of the FIRS, is to proceed on the 3 months pre-retirement leave with immediate effect, leading to his eventual retirement from service in December 2023. President Tinubu has also approved the appointment of Mrs. Delu Bolus Yakubu as the Pioneer Coordinator, Chief Executive Officer of the National Social Investment Programs Agency, NSIPA, which was signed into law in May this year. Her appointment, which was announced today, is, however, subject to confirmation by the Senate. The Central Bank of Nigeria is set to sanction international money transfer operators for breaching of foreign exchange rate pricing. According to a statement on the website, the financial market regulator says it had discovered that some IMTOs violated its directive on forex regulations as they engaged in arbitrary rate quotes outside of permissible range and other sharp practices. The sanctions listed by the CBN include being compelled to sell their proceeds to the Central Bank of Nigeria, suspension from operations, and loss of operating license. Just last month, the CBN issued guidelines to the operators and a circular listing terms and conditions, including payment mode, pricing, and rate quote, which they must comply with while providing international money transfer services. A look at the local bourse and the equities market, which went back into negative territory as investors wasted no time to take advantage of the profit made on Wednesday's trading session. Willie Bong tells us more.
Welcome to the Stock Market Report. And the dream of a positive close today went poof before our eyes. The market leaned into negative territory at intraday and stayed red at the close of the bell. The all-share index recorded a marginal loss of 0.05%. No thanks to profit-taking in major players, Zenith Bank, FBN Holdings, GTCO, and Honeywell Flour. But not all of the Fugas recorded losses. Access Holdings and UBA posted gains today, but UBA beat Access Holdings in trade volume as investors bought up over 300 million units of its shares valued at 4.9 billion naira. And that's why we have a topping trade today on the volume counter. And the company's share price also grew by 8.25% to close at 16 naira 49 kobo from its open of 15 naira 15 kobo. Consolidated Allmark Insurance also saw some buy interest today as well, and we saw Sterling Bank also featuring on the top 3 list, but for all the wrong reasons. Sell-offs. Inflation data is expected tomorrow from the National Bureau of Statistics. We just hope it doesn't help the bears to sharpen their claws. Willie Bong closing out the Stock Market Report.
That's Business News tonight. Millicent, back to you.
Thanks, Joker. Charity organizations in Libya say death toll from the recent flood devastation in the country has risen to 11,000. They also report that 20,000 people are missing as workers continue to recover bodies. The UN's World Meteorological Organization says most of human casualties could have been avoided if authorities had issued appropriate warnings and undertaken evacuations. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The UN's World Meteorological Organization says most of the thousands of deaths in the Libya floods could have been avoided. More than 5,000 people are now known to have died and at least 10,000 more are missing after 2 dams burst, releasing a tsunami of water as people slept. Warnings should have been issued leading to evacuations, according to the organization. The mayor of the eastern city of Derna estimates between 18,000 and 20,000 people there have died. This all that remains of one of the 2 dams which failed. Satellite images shows the scale of destruction in the Libyan port after floodwaters swept away bridges, streets and communities. Here, mangled cars being lifted out of the water in Derna by diggers. Ukraine says it has destroyed a sophisticated Russian air defense system in occupied Crimea. Images of the smoke were shared on Ukrainian channels on Telegram. Kyiv's security service and navy carried out the attack on a Russian facility near Yevpatoria using cruise missiles and drones. Moscow has yet to directly comment on the claim. Instead, the Russian Defense Ministry said it had shot down several Ukrainian aerial drones and thwarted a separate attack on a naval patrol vessel. Vladimir Putin has gratefully accepted Kim Jong-un's invitation to visit North Korea. The Kremlin confirmed the trip earlier after the 2 men held a rare summit in Russia's Far East. Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin have discussed possibilities for military cooperation in a highly scrutinized meeting for a suspected arms deal. Mr. Putin also said he would help Pyongyang develop satellites. The US says Moscow is buying weapons for its war in Ukraine and warned any help would violate UN resolutions.
It has become increasingly clear from DPRK statements by Kim Jong-un that the DPRK is not prepared to enter into dialogue with the United States, that it has no intention of ending its nuclear and ballistic missile programs.
A murderer who escaped from a US jail 2 weeks ago has been captured by a law enforcement dog after a heat-sensing aircraft located him. Crowds cheered as Danilo Cavalcante was loaded into an armoured vehicle to be taken back to prison. He escaped from prison 2 weeks ago by crab walking above the prison walls. He had just been sentenced to life last month for killing his ex-girlfriend in 2021. After a huge manhunt, he was finally caught as he tried to crawl away from officers who had surrounded him.
Thanks to the extraordinary work of law enforcement officials from here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, our local leaders here in Chester County, and from our federal partners all across this nation, shortly after 8 a.m., our suspect was captured. I want to say, first and foremost, thank God there were no injuries to law enforcement or to the public. We obviously became deeply concerned after the suspect was able to steal a weapon.
A huge fire has gutted hundreds of shops at a market in Bangladesh's capital, Dhaka, in the early hours of Thursday. It took 6 hours for military forces and firefighters to contain the blaze. No casualties were reported as the blaze swept through the area before shops opened. The fire service attributed the likely cause of the blaze to an electric short circuit. Fires are common in densely populated Dhaka, which has seen a building boom in recent years, often without proper safety measures. And the actress Drew Barrymore has been dropped as the host for the upcoming National Book Awards amid criticism of the actress resuming production of her show during the current Hollywood strikes. Barrymore said earlier this week her show, called The Drew Barrymore Show, would return to screens in compliance with strike rules of not promoting films or television shows. The National Book Foundation says it has therefore rescinded Miss Barrymore's invitation to host the 74th edition of the event. The foundation did not immediately name a replacement host. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. Welcome to Sports News. Barely a week after being nominated for the 2023 Ballon d'Or, Super Eagles forward Victor Osimhen is again making headlines after his being nominated in a 12-man shortlist for the Best FIFA Football Awards for 2023, unveiled today by the world's football governing body. The 24-year-old, who played a crucial role in Napoli's Scudetto success last season, with 26 goals in 32 league appearances, is the only African in the list. Top on the list includes Argentina captain Lionel Messi, Norway and Man City Erling Haaland, Kevin De Bruyne and Kylian Mbappe. Manchester United Jadon Sancho will train alone pending the resolution of a discipline issue following the attacker's falling out with manager Erik ten Hag. England international Sancho was omitted from United's squad for a 3-1 league loss to Arsenal on September the 3rd, with manager Ten Hag stating he had been left out because of poor training performance. Nigeria's under-18 women handball team are confident of a good outing at the 19th edition of African Youth Championship, which will hold in Monastir, Tunisia from September the 17th to the 23rd. Head coach Shitu Agbola and team goalkeeper Precious Samuel say their target is lifting the trophy and to secure tickets to the World Championships next year.
Our chances are bright, but I would like to also be prudent. This tournament is also a qualifier for a World Championship. So our first target is ensuring that we get that World Cup ticket, and it's 4 that will be picking the ticket. But I also want to tell you that as much as we respect names of all these big teams, we are also not scared of them.
We have been told a lot. We have not played them before, but we have been told a lot that they are good. But by God's grace, our coach has trained us to be better. And by God's grace, we pray to put forth all we have been taught here and more when we get there.
That's it on sport. It's back to you, Millicent.
Thanks, Chris. And the main news again. The President today received the report of the National Conference of Livestock, which recommended, among other steps, the establishment of the Ministry of Livestock as part of the measure by the federal government to end farmer herder crisis across the country. Nigeria and South Africa have signed a memorandum of understanding to enhance aviation safety in the country. And the appeal court has reversed tribunal judgment which declared Mr. Ndudi Elumelu of the PDP as winner of the House of Representatives seat and declared Ngozi Okoli of the Labour Party as winner of the election. And that's news at 10 tonight. Mate, thanks for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Have a good night and stay safe.